Hi, this is Kristen Henderson from Antigone Rising, and you're listening to the Radio Random Network.
My guest today is a musician and a songwriter, and she's part of a do-it-yourself independent band, and it's an all-female band representing Antigone Rising, here to talk about their brand new EP, Miss Kristen Henderson. Now, Kristen, off of the new EP, Game Changer. Now, is that a song that you wrote?
Yeah, I co-wrote it with Nene Camps, who's the band's lead singer, and a songwriter named Lori McKenna, who does a lot of Nashville writing, and she's an old friend of ours, a singer-songwriter who's based out of Boston. So the three of us wrote it together, yeah.
Now, how long have you guys been together?
It's been about 15 years or so. I mean, we formed right out of college. We went to Bucknell University in Pennsylvania, and we just started touring full-time, and eventually we got a record deal, and through Starbucks, our first album came out, and then we went back to being an indie band, and we've just been touring and putting out, our own records ever since.
So at one time, you guys were signed with Atlantic Records, correct?
Yeah, we were signed to Atlantic, an imprint on Atlantic Records called Lava Records, and we signed with them in like mid-2000s, and we put out a couple records with them in conjunction with Starbucks. So one of our bigger records came out through the Atlantic label and Starbucks back in 2005.
Not only do you have the brand new album out, you also just announced brand new tour dates for 2015.
That's true. All true. We decided this year to change things up a little bit, and instead of putting out a full-length CD, we decided to sort of break it into two halves. We put out 5 songs last March, Whiskey and Wine Volume 1, and we spent the year kind of releasing one song at a time. And then this past March, a couple weeks ago, we put out Volume 2, Whiskey and Wine Volume 2. So the lead single from this new EP, Whiskey and Wine Volume 2, is a song called Game Changer, like you said. And now we're doing some tour dates in support of it. So we'll be heading down south next week, a lot of dates up north. I mean, all over the place. We just got back from the West Coast. So wherever they'll have us, we're happy to show up.
Well, I was just recently on YouTube, and I checked you guys out. I checked your channel out. And by the way, if you're listening, go subscribe to Antigone Rising on YouTube. You can check out some great videos. But one video in particular stood out, and that's a video where you guys did a cover of the classic Queen song, Fat Bottom Girls. Now you guys rock the hell out of it, but...
well, thank you so much.
Give me a little insight on the reasons behind recording Fat Bottom Girls.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just thought it was sort of ironic for an all-female band to, cover a song called Fat Bottom Girls, and if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. So we tried to do the best we could. I mean, we are all about 3-part harmonies. We're all about like good sounding guitars, good classic rock and roll guitars. I think at the time when we started covering that song, when we first started arranging it, we actually were living in Los Angeles for a little while. We were working with a producer named Oliver Lieber, and Oliver has like an extensive collection of vintage guitars, and he was obsessed with Brian May. And so it was kind of fun to work on the arrangement with some of his gear, you know what I mean? And so I believe, I can't remember where we recorded that version. It might have been with Oliver out in Los Angeles, and it came out on a Queen tribute record or CD back then. And so we were, included on that CD. It was a tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen.
In this day and age, there's not a whole lot of all-female groups out there, especially on the independent music circuit, at least as I know of. Sometimes, I guess, to you guys, it feels like you're the only ones, but can you give us a little insight on the challenges that you guys have to face as an all-female band and what sometimes I would imagine can seem to be an all-male-dominant world?
Sometimes it feels like we are the only, to be quite honest. I mean, we can get into that, too. I could talk about that all day, but there should be more all-female bands. I think, women women as a rule across the board in any industry are facing challenges, I believe. But I do think that, it all depends on your perspective, if I'm to be honest. And yes, I do think that in many ways we are challenged in the sense that a lot of music promoters, when we're on tour, try to pigeonhole us to, the women's night or, how they've got to get, 5 or 6 other female artists on the bill with us when we come through town. And it always feels like they're trying to pigeonhole us in some way, marginalize us. as like a gimmicky thing, a kitschy thing. And then when we were signed to Atlantic Records and they were releasing our single at the time, it was a song called Don't Look Back that we co-wrote with Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20. And when it went to radio, a lot of stations were coming back saying, well, we can only add one female artist into the rotation a week, which was, that's kind of mind-boggling if you think about it. So at that time, yeah, and so, so yes, in that sense, if you're adding 10 songs a week to radio, and we've only got one slot out of all of them, as a female artist or a female-fronted artist. And then, at the time, it's like, say, No Doubt's got a single coming out, or Sheryl Crow has a single coming out. So, as a new female artist, it was really tough for us to find our way. And, I don't think that's changed very much. I still find that to be the case. And anytime I'm listening to the radio and I hear two female artists back to back, I do kind of smile and think, okay, maybe it's changing a little. You might hear like Kelly Clarkson going into Pink or something like that, and it's like, all right, that's good. I mean, it's crazy, but it's true that you have to sort of think in those terms. But on the flip side of that, what I would say, and on a positive note, because I much prefer thinking positively, as an all-female band, I do believe that more often than not, when we show up somewhere and we do our job right, which is to rock the crowd and make sure everybody's having a good time, we're the band that everybody leaves talking about. And we're the band that everybody says, wow, that made my whole time, the whole time at this festival, finding your band or discovering your band. And I think because we're an all-female band, in that sense, we tend to be a little more memorable than all the other guy bands that are on a bill, So in that sense, I think we've always used that to our advantage throughout our career. And so, you got to always find the spin, find the positive spin. We are now with Blackheart Records, Joan Jett. We're managed through Joan Jett's label, and they distribute us. And, I mean, if you want to talk about an icon, the one who's pretty much blazed the trail, it's Joan. She just got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And she's never once compromised. She's always been an indie artist, paving her own way and never took no for an answer. So she's super inspiring, and so it's, we're trying to live up to that.
Give us a little insight on what it's like to tour as an all-female band. I mean, do you get strange looks from club owners or promoters?
A few things about it. No, for the most part, the clubs, they kind of know we're coming. We have a lot of fun on the road, but the one thing I would say is more often than not, when we're on the road, our van or bus, depending on how we're traveling, always smells better than the guy bands. That's for sure. And more often than not, the guys that we're on tour with always try and, ride with us during the day in our van because it smells better than their van. So there's that advantage. And, sometimes actually we get questions like back at the hotels, if we're back in the hotels and we're walking around together, people will ask if we're like a women's sports team or something. Like, it doesn't occur to people that we're a rock band, even though we look very much like a rock band. Like, we clearly look like we're together. Typically in a hotel, if one of us comes, they'll say, oh, the rest of your party is right over there. Say if 3 or 4 of us are already down at the bar or whatever. But so we'll get asked if we're like a sports team before we're asked if we're a rock band. Even though we, I don't know how many, well, I guess soccer players can spike their hair and wear black nail polish, but we look like a rock band. But it's not what people think of first. They think we must be a sports team or something.
All right, real quick question, kind of off the cuff. Do you have to deal with male groupies?
I would say that we're equal opportunists when it comes to groupies. I think there's a lot of female groupies too. I think that women don't see women doing this that often, so I think there's that element of excitement for women. But absolutely, yes, we have male groupies. We have very dedicated ones. Thank God. Groupies in general, you need those. You need fans who want to come out and see you every single time. So, yeah, absolutely. Just keep showing up. We need bodies in the room who love the music. So as long as people are coming out, and yes, we've got men, we've got women.
I mean, what kind of stuff do you deal with when it comes to the male groupies? Do they try to pack y'all's equipment, or I could just imagine but give us a little insight on that.
Well, no, we have a road crew. They come out, and so I don't know if they get approached by the groupies to help, but they'll buy us drinks, or there have been nights where they've asked to, try to buy our clothes off our back even, or I think there's one night where my sister plays in the band and a male groupie approached her about buying I think it was our underwear after the show. He was willing to give us like an exorbitant amount of money to help keep us on tour in order for us to give him the actual underpants we had just played our show in, which we didn't do. But yeah, it's a little weird. You know what? It gets weird out on the road. I have sold people. I've actually sold a fan the T-shirt right off my back. A lot of times the fans want to keep us on the road and help sustain us. We're an indie band, and people know that, and we are pretty hands-on for the most part. I mean that as an expression, not literally, but our fans are very involved in what we do, and we like to keep it that way. So when we're out on the road, very often people will just literally hand us gift certificates or coupons to Cracker Barrel because they know we need to eat breakfast, or they'll literally give us cards to Exxon or Mobil stations because they know we're going to need gas. They're thoughtful. They know why they're giving us money for a reason, and this is what it's for, to keep us out on the road. So, in that sense, it's nice. And one time I did have a fan who wanted my shirt, and so I figured, here you go. I went and changed my shirt and gave them the shirt off my back.
I'm sitting here talking to Kristen from Antigone Rising, and Kristen, we were talking a little bit about your songwriting at the top of the show, but quick question concerning that. I mean, is there a certain ritual or a certain mood that you have to be in to write a song, or are you the type of person that can go in and it's kind of like a light switch? You just kind of can sit down with a pen and paper and let your emotions just kind of spill out?
Yeah, I'll do that. Well, you know what? It really does depend. When I write on my own, yes, there'll be nights where I'll just jump up out of bed, or the first thing in the morning. There's that kind of fine time in the morning where you're just waking up and an idea will hit you because you're still sort of in this sort of dreamy, sleepy stage. And I love those moments because I'll catch something right in that moment, But a lot of times too, I'm writing in a session, and it'll be we've got Lori McKenna coming up, or we're going to meet with Lori, and it'll be we're writing Tuesday at 2:00. So you kind of got to show up, and that's a little more, you got to kind of get into a headspace for that. So it's all different ways, It's what I do. So you got to figure out how to do it. You got to be able to call on it when you need it, So I much prefer, though, those moments where it's super organic and where you're feeling inspired by something and you just sit down, and those usually come out the easiest,
And I do apologize. I know I'm botching the name of the band. I guess it's like the Southern drawl thing going on. Something that I got to deal with, but it's all good.
It does not bother me at all. Call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late to dinner. I kind of like the Antigone Rising, the way you say it.
Now, being on tour and having a family and recording and being a do-it-yourself musician, artist, or a recording artist, what kind of support system do you have at home?
I have a good one. You got to have a strong one. I've got a lot of family close by and a lot of people I trust, a lot of good friends. So, we're back and forth quite a bit, but whenever I can bring the kids with us, I do. And, fortunately, I've got my mom here and, people around who love the kids. So I'd like to believe they're doing well.
Being on Joan Jett's label and touring with Rob Thomas and different ones, have they given you any advice or anything that maybe kind of stick with you today? We've
been on the road. We toured with the Stones. We toured with the Allmans. We've been out with some legends, And so over the course of that time, honestly, the one thing that's honestly sticking out, that's jumping out at me, there's a Grammy-winning songwriter actually named Julie Gold. She wrote a song called From a Distance that Midler made into a huge hit. And Julie won the Grammy for Song of the Year. And she said to our band, she was one that we know her pretty well, and she let us hold her Grammy and all that. You have that moment where you're touching somebody's Grammy. She said, just don't ever forget whatever they tell you, they're wrong. As much rejection as you can, they're wrong. Just always, that's your mantra. And we've always thought that, with the amount of rejection you get as an all-female band or as any artist, you're putting it out there. Just remember, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong. And eventually, if you keep doing what you do, you keep coming back in. You keep coming back into style. So just be true to yourself. Do it the way you do it, and eventually they'll catch up to you. And so I've always lived by that. I think that in my head on so many occasions. Not even just in my music career, but in life in general.
Now you guys were nominated for 2 independent music awards. I believe it was the Outmost Music Award, something like that. Give us a little. What was that experience like? I mean, what's it feeling like to know that your art, something that you created, is being recognized?
So nice. I mean, I never go into it thinking, obviously, I hope we're nominated for an award for this. So when you are acknowledged, especially as an independent band and indie artists, it's just exciting. And, it's an honor, and, it gets me psyched.
If the opportunity ever arises and you get a chance to sign with a major label, would you consider it?
I would never say never. And my only reasoning is behind that is we had such a great experience when we were signed to a major. The time that we spent with Lava Records, they were such a great, supportive group, and really believed in what we did. So it was a very positive experience. But quite frankly, now, even though we're distributed through Blackheart, which they're an indie, Blackheart's an indie, but they're so supportive. So any experience we've ever had on record labels has always been positive. So I think as long as we felt like we weren't being compromised in any way, and I think too, we're a smart enough band, we've been around long enough now, that we would know that going in. I would know, what kind of situation we would need to be able to work well with a label. I think a lot of bands go into finding a record deal thinking that the record label is going to make them or save them or create them. And truthfully, we're a band that's fully sustained, and we have been for a long time. We're basically a small business. We do it ourselves. We're already doing it ourselves. So we're already making our living. We already tour all the time. We don't need a label to help us do all of that. So in a lot of ways, a label becomes our partner more than our boss. So that's how we approach it, I mean, you look at, Pink or Beyonce or any of those bands, it's hard work. They're being flown all over the place. It's craziness. So, but yeah, indie bands, we do it a little grittier. We're probably doing it in a van. We're probably not getting paid quite as much. But it's hard work, to stay in shape and to, keep your voice up every night and make sure your fingers aren't shredded. And, I mean, it's not pretty all the time.
Have you ever had any incidences on the road where you had to kick anybody's ass?
Well, yeah, you learn tricks of the trade. We back in, and when we back our trailer in, we'll back it up and try and keep it up against as close to a wall as possible. But, people come with, they'll cut through with, saws and things through your trailer, So it's crazy out there, We had an incident one time. We were touring in a bus, and our trailer literally snapped off the back of the bus, smashed into the bus, and then ended up flying down the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Say you're driving up the Pennsylvania Turnpike, suddenly our trailer's coming at you head on. And thank God nobody got hurt. It ended up careening off the highway. But in there was my 1967 Telly, and there was some serious gear in that trailer. And so we learned our lesson pretty quickly. Nothing got wrecked, but the cases did. All of our travel cases were mangled, but the guitars themselves were okay. And so we've never traveled with a piece of vintage gear again.
Now, you guys got to tour with the Rolling Stones, and what was that experience? I mean, that's an experience in itself, I can imagine, but what was that like?
We spent a lot of time with Ron Wood. Ron Wood would hang with us quite a bit. Charlie Watts was coming into our dressing room, and he and our drummer Dina were warming up together. It was totally surreal. And Keith would come over to the side of the stage on the nights that we were playing, or he would see us backstage. And I mean, Keith Richards is, that's no act he's putting. He's like that all the time, So we were backstage. We were walking around backstage, and as me and one of my bandmates were walking toward him, he had on his sunglasses and he had a cigarette dangling from his mouth, and he took his sunglasses and he pulled them down so he was looking at us eye to eye. And he looks at us both and he shakes his head and he goes, "Yummy." And I was like, right on. Keith Richards has called us yummy. So I was like, all right. Normally I might punch a guy for that out of nowhere, but Keith Richards can get away with that. Hell yeah, and they rock. They were awesome. It was such a fun tour.
Now, is there any advice that you can share with any upcoming female musicians or recording artists that maybe want to follow in your footsteps?
Well, yeah, do what you love, stick to your guns, stick to your instincts, and never give up, believe. Just you got to believe, because that's what we did. It's all we did, and we've lived our dream. It may not, you think you know what you want. You may think you know exactly where you're headed or what you want, but you realize quickly as the story unfolds, you just got to keep reinventing and keep figuring it out, but keep putting one foot in front of the other and do what you love, and it all comes back. It's worth it, And, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. It's a pleasure.
All right, Kristen. Well, I appreciate it. I encourage everybody to go to AntigoneRising.com to find out all about their music and catch iTunes and Amazon.com to get the new EP, Whiskey and Wine Volume 2, brand new single, featured single, Game Changer. Be sure and check these girls out on social media as well. Kristen, thank you very much for joining me.
Sure.
More information about the Radio Random Network, just stay tuned. And anytime, Kristen, thank you very much for joining me today. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.